Everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Black History Month podcast. I'm so excited to have my good friend here, Stephen Brent Sargent. We have such good conversation whenever we get together. It is great. I'm excited for everybody to find out about his story and what he's doing and what he believes and how he manifests and makes things happen. So, Stephen, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on this podcast. And more importantly, I'm happy for you to be kind of expressing and highlighting Black professionals in this industry and others.
Thank you. And it sounds weird, but like the first week of Black History Month, I was like, you know something? I always like to hear stories and I like to be inspired by people. And I'm not really seeing anything there. And I thought, you know something? It's the first week, but let me just do it myself. So I've done it, and I have about 8 people scheduled because February is a short month. But I'm going to be continuing it through in March and April and just asking some really pertinent questions to a lot of people. So you were on my list, my friend, because you are making things happen. You are like on LinkedIn and you are blowing it up, and people absolutely love interacting with you. And so before we get into the whole LinkedIn and everything like that, I want people to know a little bit about you. So tell me about yourself and like, what was your journey?
So I'm born and raised in Canada. My parents are actually from Barbados. My mom's a Bayesian and my dad's a Vincentian. So that's where I get my Caribbean roots from. But most recently, you know what, to be quite honest, I was doing collections at a school for like 12 years, like hardcore collections, calling people on their phone, basically telling them we're going to take away their house and car and everything. So I did that for a long period of time. I don't think many people know that about me.
No.
But doing that kind of work, I really want to get more into that. I want to do what I would consider more legitimate ways of persuading people to pay bills and to do what was legal. So I got into the paralegal program at Seneca. I finished that. I had a couple paralegal jobs. They were great. But what I found with working with lawyers is that the lawyers always kind of had the last word. Even though, you might have known a certain subject a little bit better than them, they're the ones that went to law school and they're the ones that have practiced and you did the articling. So I always felt that I wanted to get into an industry where the field was a little bit more even. And what I noticed was that when I was working at one of the companies, they were a fintech company that was buying up a lot of fintechs in North America. It was actually Davis and Henderson. So if you work for a bank, they're the one that they cut all the checks at the banks, right? They're the one that create the checks. So they're buying a whole bunch of fintechs. This was May 2015. I was looking in, let me go on some podcasts and learn more about fintech. Well, everyone at that point was talking about cryptocurrency and blockchain. The price was like $500. I was like, I don't even want to be a paralegal anymore, to be quite honest. I want to get into this. But I had no sales experience and I had no kind of skills when it came to technology. But I was listening to a podcast and I reached out to the podcaster and he was like, hey, like there's going to be compliance opportunities. This, like any other technology, is going to be heavily regulated. It may not be right now, but this is an avenue you can go. So he gave me a list. I sent him an email. In 10 minutes, he responded, gave me a list of all the things to do, including getting my certificate to become an anti-money laundering professional. And that's what I did. I worked a little bit at HSBC, but I still had that urge to get into cryptocurrency. That's why I wanted to get into compliance. And then when Bitfinex was looking to expand and create their AML department, Peter Warwick, who I'd worked with other anti-human trafficking initiatives, was the first call. I was the first call he made, and that's where I am right now as a deputy manager in AML investigations. So that's kind of my career journey in about 3 minutes.
So that's really impressive. So I feel, and this has happened in a relatively short period of time. So like, what did that journey teach you, just in terms of, because I feel like you accomplished quite a bit in a short amount of time. So what is it that you've learned through that experience?
For me, it's not being scared to pivot. I spent a lot of money to become a paralegal, doing the examinations, getting licensed. And for me to kind of wake up one morning and tell my wife, like, hey, I really want to get into this crypto. I really want to get into this AML aspect. And I have to spend the same amount of money to do that in a short period of time. She was very supportive. So that's one of the things I look back on, that I wasn't afraid to pivot no matter what anyone was saying, or like, oh, how come you did this when you're not using it? And I think that's what people struggle with. They're scared to make a decision and pivot away from that decision if they feel that it's their calling, and they get stuck in doing what they may not want to do without even trying. I was at least going to try. So, and that's definitely how I think things worked out in such a short period of time. Another thing would be that I wasn't scared to put myself out there. I think a lot of people have some great insights, even coming from other industries. I think when you come into a new industry, everyone's kind of doing the status quo in that industry. But when you when you come into something like compliance, a lot of people that are like entrepreneurs like yourself will know you kind of shape things, you bring your new insights in there, and a lot of people are too scared to do that. And I was able to definitely put myself out there, not as an expert, but as someone that was insatiably curious, and putting out my own ideas and try to do things a little bit differently, where I feel in compliance, a lot of people try to go the subject matter expertise certificates, whereas I'm trying to bring education and build a community. And I think when you do something a little bit different, there is a little bit of resistance from the industry, but I think deep down, a lot of people enjoyed it. So I think that's what I would consider a little bit more has led to my success in that part.
Okay, so here's my question for you. You don't seem to mind putting yourself out there. I had to learn how to do that. Did you have to learn how to do that? How to put yourself out there? Because everyone in the beginning is sort of afraid of rejection and afraid of people making fun of you. And if you put your hand up and say something, and I had to sort of say, no, I want to know this, so I'm gonna take that chance, and hopefully it'll work out. What about you?
I feel the same way. Like going into this industry, when people would post things, I would do a little bit of research and then I would ask questions. So instead of me kind of putting my opinions and this is what was fact just because I read one article, I would do a little bit of research on the subject, then go in and ask questions. That kind of puts the onus on that person, right? Like how many articles have they read about the subject? So if there's subject matter expertise and they want to engage in a good conversation, they will. But now the onus is on them. They don't want to come right out and say that, hey, you're wrong, Stephen, if they haven't done the research.
I'm pausing this for 2 seconds.
No problem.
You can't see me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Stephen.
No problem.
Continue. I just, you couldn't see me. That's the problem. So, yeah. So what were you saying? You were
just about putting myself out there and others, like you put the onus on the person, on the other. If you're learning and you kind of put out there, hey, I'm just learning, I'm just trying to get into this and ask questions. And once you're asking intelligent questions, I don't think there's any reason to be scared to put yourself out there. Secondly, I think a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I just came up with my mindset that I don't really care what other people think. And that includes even my wife sometimes. I'm going to do me what feels, I go with my gut only. Like if I listen to my wife, I wouldn't post half the things I do on LinkedIn. But I also wouldn't have achieved as much as I have. So I do take into consideration a lot of things she has to say. But I think everyone's so worried about this persona, whereas I'm okay because I'm being 100% myself. Nobody's going to catch me in another scenario and say, Stephen's only acting like that on LinkedIn, but he's completely different in person. It's going to mirror my personality 120%. I might add even a little bit more sarcasm on LinkedIn just to get the people going. But I think that's what the hardest part is people care a little too much about what others think.
Yeah, I always try to be myself. And sometimes, like I always say, I'm not for everyone, but you'll know that you're getting 100% authentic me, right? And if you're not for this person, it's okay. They have what they like and you have who you are and what you like. And it's okay, but I love that you are who you are. Like your personality is 100% what I see on LinkedIn. And sometimes, like when you're annoyed at certain corporations for doing things or charging too much, yeah, I can hear your voice. I laugh, and then I scroll to the comments because that's gonna be the best part, right?
And what is funny, like people will respond to me, and it's not that I don't like those organizations or I don't like what people are doing. Is I just don't like certain things, and I'm allowed to speak to that, and they can speak back to those points. But what I realize is that they won't speak back to certain points because a lot of what I'm saying has some truth to it. And if you want to prove me wrong, like by all means, I encourage people like, okay, let's just put everything where it is. If I'm lying about the numbers, about how much it costs to run a virtual conference, by all means, put your numbers out there. And that's to the detriment of myself. I'm a speaker that gets opportunities to speak for these same conferences that I talk about. But nobody's going to ever say that, oh, Stephen's biased because he gets paid by this company or he gets to speak at this company. I go across the board, even if it's to the detriment or even if I'm losing money. So I think that's what builds a credible person in this industry, and that's why I try to maintain.
Okay, so that's really good. So that's a question for you. When did you decide to share your knowledge with people, because that sort of just happened one day and I was like, okay, he's going all in on this. So what did you decide?
I think early on in the career, I noticed that there was a lot of ambiguity when it came to what certifications to take specifically in AML. Like there was nobody putting out content on what to do. So, and I was talking to, like, before I got into the industry, when I was still a paralegal, I had reached out to maybe 500 people on LinkedIn just to get a sense of the industry. Even though maybe a quarter of them responded, you start to learn a lot. There's a lot of trends you start to notice, and there's a lot of good information that's repeated. So basically all I was doing is taking that information, adding my little spin to it and putting back out there. Cause I'm like, if it helped me, it's definitely going to help a lot of other people, and they won't have to spend the time talking to 400 or 500 people. And that's when I started putting out information. And then when you put things like that out, people start reaching out to you like, oh, what about this? What about that? I'm like, what about that? Let me learn a little bit more and I'll get back to you. And then that created more content and more information I was sharing. And it just turns into a snowball, right? You learn more, you talk to more people, and you put more out there.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw this one out there. I feel as if you have more fun posting stuff on LinkedIn and talking to people and, being an educator. With this in mind, I want to ask, what are your ambitions? What is it you want to accomplish?
That's a big question. Honestly, like selfishly, and I tell this to everyone, I want the industry to go through me. I know that sounds selfish, but I think I can add value to everything that touches me in this industry, just because I have so many conversations with people. I know a lot about what's going on behind closed doors, of a lot, not even like secret things, but I just know a lot of what's going on. So when you speak to me, in my head, I just go through a Rolodex of like, oh, you need an event planner, blockchain? Oh, okay. Oh, you need strategy, data systems? Like, go talk to Emma. Like, I just know these things from having, and there's a lot of people like that in an industry. I use you, for example, Amber Scott, Peter Work. There's a ton of people that are what I call master connectors, is that the industry goes through them for their credibility and for their added value. And I love being a part of things. So that's my completely selfish answer. Although that does help people, I just love being in the mix. Like, imagine like every time someone's talking about something, they reach out to you and they say, hey, what about this? I learn more that way, and I get to connect more.
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience for me, because last week I had a meeting with the largest event planning company in the world. And they were like, Emma, you're a connector. You know people, and here's what we like to do in XYZ. And my mind was just blown. I was like, the largest company in the world is asking me for XYZ. And I was like, wow, this is a moment I never anticipated or thought I would ever happen. To hear you say that 1 week later, I was like, okay. And for me, it just really is, I know people and I always want to help somebody. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can connect you with this person or do whatever, right? And I don't mind doing it. People had to tell me that, maybe we should start charging. But I'm like, something, if it's depending on what it is, I'm not going to, because everyone can use a leg up. And everyone was so nice to me when I first got in. And it was Amber, as you know, that got me into the space. And she basically said, here are my friends, and, they can really help you. And they were also welcoming and kind, that I really want to try and, return the favor. Sometimes you get an avalanche of people and you're like, I really can't help you all. This is a lot. But, I do try to help who I can. And so I really think that you do it very well, though, Stephen, and people seem to gravitate towards you. I'm a little bit reserved, but you're kind of like, hey, I love everybody.
I would say that. I like helping people, but I also realize just like everybody's time is valuable. But I'm also trying to help educate people. So people come short-sighted, and they're just like, hey, I need a job, guide me, give me advice. I'm also trying to educate them, like, that's not the way you approach people. So I probably spend way too much time doing that, whereas other people would ignore them. But there's a small part of me that doesn't want people to be like, oh, I tried LinkedIn networking and it doesn't work, and I was on LinkedIn type message. I want them to know, like, no, it's not LinkedIn, it's you. But it's okay, because I used to do exactly what you used to do. And I show people the messages I used to send people. And I definitely admit to being the exact same way. And I want to help people kind of change that short-sighted mindset.
Yeah, you put that one out there last week on LinkedIn. No, it's you. If you do this, it's you. And I was like, But
and
people need to hear that, right? They do. They're never
and
going to change it unless they know.
and there's going to be exceptions to everything, but there's not going to be a mass amount of people in my comments saying I'm wrong. And that's how I know that I'm on the right lines, is people realize, like, and you take it with a grain of salt, but people realize, like, if they're not getting results and they're doing the same things I'm saying not to do, then maybe it might be time just to switch up their approach.
Okay, so here's my thing for you. Here's my question for you. Have you had to do things differently or approach things differently because you're Black? And I say this because, I mean, I've had to do things a little bit differently sometimes. I'm generally me, but sometimes you think, okay, maybe let me just approach this a little bit differently. Or sometimes I have to really show you what my credentials are, so you believe who I am and what I'm saying, and then you don't ask that of my friend. And believe me, I've got better credentials than they do. And I'm wondering if you've ever had to, like, approach things differently, or do you still have to? So yeah.
I can't think of anything recently, honestly. And the only reason why is because I just realized, like, I just have to be who I am. I'm extra, I'm eccentric, I'm enthusiastic, I'm loud on the phone, I'm jumping through Zoom calls when I talk to people for the most part. And I know that it's going to burn a lot of opportunities. But I also know that I have a duty to, like, I want to be myself. And this isn't even just going from my career, but even with speaking engagements, there's some conferences that I'll ask them the uncomfortable questions, like, what are you doing about diversity? And if those organizations say that they were going to do something about diversity and I haven't seen them do it, then I'm not speaking at their conference. And I'm not promoting that to the world and, like, yeah, follow me, you should ask the same question. That's okay. People have to do what's in their best interest. And maybe I'm privileged because I've had the exposure already, so I don't feel that I need it as much now. But I think those are the small things that at least the conferences will be like, well, why is he saying that? Why is he acting this way? And then what are we doing internally to avoid this from happening again? So I don't think I have to do things differently. I think I want to call it, and I haven't done this in the past. I'm not Malcolm X or, leading a revolution. This isn't always how I have to be, but, in the last year, I've kind of seen, like, these are the things that have come natural. This is what we expect, right? The unfair treatment, the inequality is what we expect. And then it's like, when I'm seeing people look around, like, this is really happening, like, okay, where have you been for the last 50 years? Like, what do you mean this is like, I was a little bit mystified that people were surprised by what was happening. And I think that's why I decided maybe I should speak up a little more, because I think this is normal, but people are like shocked by what's going on in the world right now. Whereas it doesn't come as a shock, I don't think, to us.
So I think, like, came as a little bit of a shock to me, just because, and I fully admit I have different experiences. I grew up in Jamaica, and I was one of the majority, and I went to Ottawa, and then in Ottawa I was one of the minority, but because it's the capital, there are at the time, there are very, like, low instances of anything like any racism that I experienced, because you never want to cause an international incident, because nobody ever knows who you really are, right? You could be walking on the street, you could be A, B, C, D, E.
True. So I didn't think of it.
Yeah, it was that, like, I was just like, what do you mean? Everyone's my friend. Everybody loves me, And then from Toronto, and things are a little bit different. But then, I was in banking, had a great job, drive a nice car, live in a good area. But even then, when you get in your car, you still never know people, you still are who you are. And then, you kind of start to realize, okay, no, as I get older, things that I was a little bit naive about, now I'm like, okay, I understand a little bit more what people are saying, right? And that's actually why I love working with people in blockchain, because everyone at the time when I first started, they were all kind of eccentric. Okay, they're still eccentric.
As much change, yeah. I was gonna say, I don't think much has changed. They're just eccentric with more money.
But, like, they were eccentric, and they were like, we don't really care, if you're a woman or you're a man or you're Black or you're white. We just really want to know, like, what's in your head, what's in your brain, like, how can you help me, things like that, right? And that's why I love them. Like, I will do anything for these guys who were there when I first started, because they really are just, they're kind of eccentric. And you haven't lived till you've gone to an important meeting and they show up in, like, sweatpants. Just like, I thought you put on jeans and a clean shirt.
I think Mark Zuckerberg kind of helped that movement when the social movement came, like that movie that came out, like he kind of helped that that kind of that movement.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, from
It's
a
too funny.
professional sense, I 100% agree with you that the blockchain community is super open.
Hmm.
I never felt like race was ever an issue, even in in compliance. But I just think you look around and you see that there's certain ceilings, and there's definitely certain clicks. And although sometimes you might be around the table, I just don't feel that you're constantly being invited to the table unless
Hmm.
I feel that you're offering way more value than what I would say is your white counterparts at that same table. And that's what I
Yeah,
believe, honestly.
I do. I will tell you that our experiences are different here than they are in the States. In the US, it's a lot more cliquey, and they definitely have their, different people. Whereas I think Canada, we're all smaller, very fortunate enough to just know the right people right away, so we're already in the inner circle. But in the US, it's a lot different. So if people, and I was fortunate enough that I was able to translate and transfer and automatically be in the inner circle in the US too, right? But still, you're kind of like, okay, this is a little bit different. But I mean, Canada's not perfect, but it's not bad. It's not bad.
It definitely isn't bad, but I think you definitely see like a certain group of people that are, especially when it comes to financial services. Now always talk about the point, especially in compliance. Like you go to any banking institution, even crypto for the little bit now, is like they want X regulators, they want X government workers, they
Hmm.
want X high level intelligence people. But those organizations, like you look at like RCMP, there's reports that say those organizations are heavily discriminatory when it comes to the hiring process. So now you have these organizations that want senior level people, and they're picking from a pool that's already been diluted due to racial inequality. And I think that's where I have a lot of that's where I see a lot of it. Like, well, what can we do differently, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's some good organizations around that are kind of doing great, but I think from a financial crime compliance, that's where you see most of the people that are coming into senior roles are ex-law enforcement, and we just don't have those. As a Black professional, you're not in the same percentage when it comes to those hiring pools as you would be in lower level roles.
true. This is true. But we're gonna change that. That's what we do. That's what we do. We're gonna change it. So here's my question for you: what drives you? What keeps you going?
I think for me, it's a little bit of ego. Like when I see messages from people saying like, thank you, I'm like, okay, like, because to be quite honest, a lot when and you probably know this, when you're giving a lot and you're connecting people a lot and you're spending your time, which you could probably be doing to earn more money or get better at your craft, to charge more money, and you're giving it away. I think your ego sometimes needs those. I don't need it for validation, but I need that push. Like, when a random person messages me that I've never even spoken to or never seen a comment from them on LinkedIn, and they're like, I love your posts, they're helpful, keep on going. Like, that's what drives me, is just to be the voice. I just don't think there's that very many people that are willing to put, I would say their career on the line, but are willing to give up income or willing to give up title to express how they feel. I think the majority of people are not going to do that. So my objective, my drive is to the exact opposite, is to continue to put myself
Mhm.
in situations that most people wouldn't.
Okay, so that's really good. So here's my question: I consider you to be successful. Do you consider yourself to be successful?
I think I'm relatively successful. I think I know how I spend my day, and there's definitely some hours in there that I could be using to my a better potential to be more successful. But I would consider myself successful.
Okay, and what goals do you want to accomplish in the next few years?
For me, I want to like impact the most amount of people. I want to, I've had like a ton of ideas in my head
Hmm.
around courses, around content, around training, around, just producing like any kind of quality productions. And I feel like in the last few years, what I've been getting bogged down is by saying yes to everyone else's projects, and I haven't been focusing on my own. So what I want to do is
Yeah.
accomplish my own projects with people that I'm really close to, and just
Hmm.
be focused and determined on those projects. That would be my biggest drive and ambition right now, is to put out those projects, and not so much to make money. And even though some of them, like, hey, they are going to be paid for a project, it's not, my goal is never to make money. I feel like if I can put out the most content and the most information and add the most value, the money's going to come to me either way.
Um, you and I think that's absolutely an admirable goal, and I really think you should go for it. You've got the personality, you've got the drive. you've got the connections, and you've got a platform, and you should definitely do it. I wonder how many hours in a day do you actually spend creating content, or do you just sort of have this idea and you just go for it?
Have the idea, I write it down in my notes, and then I go for it. Some of them I'll take a while with, like even
What?
the
Okay.
some of them I'll take a while with, just because like I don't like just to put out some of my thoughts. I like to add pictures, and I'm visual, so I like to add a couple of things. But some of them, like when it comes to my mind, like they're going down. You can tell which ones go straight to LinkedIn and which ones have been thought out a little bit more and probably polished down a little bit, just because I like to think about what I'm saying first. I don't like to go just off of emotion, but yeah, people think I have this like content strategy. I think a lot of the times,
Yes.
but
Yes, we do.
I do in a sense. Like if I have a few thoughts, if I have an event I'm doing, if I'm want to promote somebody else's great work, I try to do that in the morning. So I try to promote other people's stuff, including my own stuff, or just what I really think is viral content, like some really good pieces of nuggets that I'm like, oh, I think this will be good. I try to do that in the morning. More people get it. I like to hit my European friends up too. And then at nighttime, I'll just put out some random thoughts. Like if I get a message from somebody, I'm like, I don't think this is the way you should approach people. Like that's when you're just going to get random thoughts. And the weekend, I'll just put whatever. Like the weekend is like probably the best time to look over my content, because I'm just throwing out some things that should never be on LinkedIn. I'm just putting them out there, and just like, if you're on LinkedIn on the weekend, you probably have a sense of humor anyway. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. Your content just makes me laugh. And sometimes I'm like, ooh, that's spicy. Okay, let's see. Let's look at the comments. Yep, they agree. All right, all right. So what advice would you give people in general who are looking to, be like you or emulate you? And this applies to, Black men, Black women, white men, white women, everybody. What advice would you give them?
you know what? I think of like the Gary Vee. I watch a lot of Gary Vee content, and the one that stuck with me the most is one is greater than zero. If I listened to people and thought about, oh, how many people are going to come to this if I did this, I have zero fears about doing things. So I think that's one thing people have to do. If you do an event and only 3 people show up and everyone starts laughing like, oh, you only had 3 people coming to listen to you is huge. Right now, like, we're caught up in a society where we're like spend more time looking at other people's lives than actually enjoying our own. So if you have 3 people that are willing to spend time to listen to you or watch you, and I think a lot of people don't do the ideas that they have because they're scared of A, what their coworker is going to say, B, what their employer is going to say, and C, what all their friends and family members are going to say. And I don't care about any of those situations. I respect people's opinion, but I don't let that stop me. If I want to speak about foreign professionals and think that we should start a foreign professional event, I went to a couple local organizations and talked to them, and I did that event over a year ago, and I didn't even get a response from those organizations about the event. And we had over 120 people wait on the sign up for that first event that we did. And when I came home and I told my wife, and I was, chipsing up my mouth, I was vexed. I was like, these companies don't do nothing for us. She's like, shut up, go do it yourself. And I think that's exactly what you said. You don't like what you see about Black history and podcasts, go do it yourself. And that's what I think people have to start doing is like, we're waiting for other people to do it. And then when we don't do it, we rather complain than kind of doing it ourselves. And everyone has nothing to do with money or anything like that. And on the money factor, like, yeah, why not? You have a good idea and you're spending money to go execute it. I did a workshop. It probably cost me $500. I had bagels, I had donuts, I rented out a space, but that was my workshop. I wanted to make that experience amazing for the people that attended it. And one of the people that attended it was Susan Ismaili. And the idea she got from that workshop was the TCAE, which is a local AML group that has now grown into a weekly knowledge series and now has people visiting it from all over the world. So had I not taken the extra steps and the genuine interest to kind of perform and give someone a different experience than anyone else would, then these things just might not happen. And now she helps me out in a lot of things that I need to do. So I think people, if they have an idea, they should actually go for it.
Yep, that is absolutely true. I totally agree with you. That was really amazing. So here's my last question for you. Are there any words that you want people to know? Anything that you think that they need to know in this day and age, and especially right now in the times of COVID? And if you're working or you're frustrated or whatever, what words would you like to tell them?
I think you have to change your mindset. That is, and you know me, I'm big on mindset. I'm big on that kind of, and the reason why is because I think we were talking about this earlier, and a lot of people are scared to say that COVID's good. Like, obviously there's tragedy that goes with it, and obviously we would love to be able to go around, hug all of our family and friends. But for the most part, I think we discussed a little bit about this before the podcast, is that it's brought out the best and the worst in people. So it's only natural that it's going to be really great for people that have a really good mindset. There's people that are like looking at this, and as soon as it happened, they're like, opportunity, 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 opportunity. That's all I see is when things like this happen. I'm not worried about money or pay. I'm like, what can I do right now? Put more into and my brain just said, put more into the community. Everything you got. Calls, doesn't matter. Jump on the phone with people. Send people voice notes. Do whatever you need to put more into the community. While others are just like, I'm not going to do anything. I don't have to do anything because I'm not going to get promotion this year, and there's not going to be any bonus this year. I'm just going to sit back and complain. And I think the mindset is what completely differs the people at the top and the people like yourself that are able to adapt constantly and have a smile on their face while they do it, from the people that are just sitting and complaining and like they're absorbing. Like, I couldn't even tell you how many COVID cases there are for the most part. But there's people that know those numbers. They know exactly what the Minister of Health and the Ministry of Health is. And I'm just like, you're just spending too much time focused on the problem. And, you know, like, we're not in this for a few, as we can see now, we're not in this for a few weeks. So I think that would be people need to really take the time, and whether that's to look for coaching, to just work on themselves, read books and meditate. Those are the things that have completely changed my life, is just focusing on my mindset and where my mind is. And I'm not perfect. Like, there's days I'm like, at my old house, you'll see there's doors that have holes in it. I'm not perfect. When I get mad, I get mad. But the beauty of it is I'm more aware now. So like, if I'm mad one day and I'm sitting there, I'm cycling through my head and say, okay, you're mad because you didn't do the work you were supposed to yesterday. Now you have more work to do. Now you can't spend the time with your family that you wanted to. So now you're beating yourself up because of the work, because you chose not to do it yesterday. Whereas I think people just get mad and they're like, who can I blame? Oh yeah, it's my boss's fault that he gave me too much work. And I think that's where the mindset starts. That's where the mindset work pays dividends.
Absolutely. Wow. That was so good. I absolutely agree with everything. And you give me some more nuggets to think about. And I absolutely love that. This was really good, Stephen. I really kind of wish we had more time, but you know, we're right at our 30 minutes. This is absolutely great. Thank you so very much for this.
No problem.
And I can't wait we're doing this again, by the way, because I just know people don't understand. Like, we can talk all day, like just the stuff that comes back and forth between us. It's just, I'm always learning, and I love that. So thank you so much, Stephen.
I love it. And people don't realize what it takes to do what you're doing. You're a master connector. And that's hard to do because that takes years of just putting yourself out there and putting in the work, speaking to people and listening to people. There's a lot of people that can go out and talk to people, but you're actually listening. And I don't think people realize what it takes to do the things you do and to get the opportunities that come your way. So you should applaud yourself for what you're doing with this podcast and what you're doing for the industry.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. On that lovely note, now that I'm all happy and everything, we'll end it. But thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Anytime. We'll do it again anytime. Thanks so much, Emma.
Thank you.